Alright, W124 Wagon hatch struts that hold up your tailgate. This is fun times right here, I tell you. First order, Phillips. We have a couple screws here on the trim. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know how to count, 5, and that one, which is actually gone because it's broken. So, you can do this first, or you don't have to do this first. You can get right to this meat of it. Doesn't really matter the order. I figured this is just kind of the easier thing to start with. The way this headliner comes down is these screws, and if you pull down here just a little bit, if you see under here, there's these little, where are they? Right there. Right there. That little tan blob with a black arm on it, that little black arm is actually hooked up and under part of the headliner. And one over here. So what you do is you grab the headliner, you pull it slightly down to get those hooks out of that thing. You can even move over to the hook and then out. All the while you're trying to kind of flex this around this. Yeah, it's got movement. That's probably why that one got broken. Someone did it too far, but you can move this down enough to get this out of your way. But you basically pull down, out towards you, and down a little bit, and get this headliner down. And I'll show you what that looks like. An additional note before I pull on that headliner cover all the way. Well, first of all, hey Mercedes there. Second of all, part of what keeps this headliner piece in here, see this little tan ledge right here? This tan ledge is supposed to go up and behind this black rubber gasket. So if you flip the gasket down some, this little step edge goes under that gasket and it holds it into the ceiling. So I'll remove that now. As you can see, here's that hook again. So I've taken it, pulled it back down so the hook's out. I've gotten this little step right here out from underneath this rubber up there. And it comes down and then just kind of work the same side. I'm going to put the camera down because I don't want this to break off, but I'll get this up and out. We need to drop the headliner down. You can see some of the strut showing right there. See this little workman's hole, but we need to drop this headliner down. So you'll see these three little hole looking things with tabs. The body metal tab. This is like a rod. They've stitched a metal, kind of like a hanger, coat hanger rod all along this thing. So what you're going to do is, don't grab the cloth and rip it off, but grab the rod itself. You can feel it underneath there through this thing. You're going to take that and stretch it towards the back and down. So you'll see the little rod thing here. It's inside that cloth, and there was the hook it was on, so it's kind of up and hooked in. So you do that for all three. I might need 2 hands on this one. Yeah, but you'll undo all 3 of these and the headliner comes down some. Another thing you do is get a little pick tool or something, and this is just a peg that goes into the hole. Take that one off, as well as this one off on both sides. You see them here and under there somewhere, and that'll drop that down. So this is not really bad. It's just if you don't know what you're doing, it seems scary. It's just really not. You can see I got the hooks off of there, and the headliner just hangs a little bit, and it doesn't go anywhere because there's another rod down here somewhere doing the same thing. So you don't have to worry about it being ripped or sagging on you, getting it or losing its ability to be taut. There's the strut you can see here. I'm missing the little rubber accordion looking boot that goes over it. I have a replacement. Here you can see the one that's in there, but it's kind of crooked. Where to fix that. And next step is to get these black pegs out, as I said. And I'll show you what that looks like when they're down. Now that I have these little pegs out, you can see what they kind of look like. It's just a little thing that goes in that hole. Just put it aside. Now, headliner comes back to a point where you can see There's a little bit of insulation here. You just drop it down. It doesn't hurt anything. Now you can see the whole headliner, and you can actually see the pin in which we're going to undo to get the back half of the strut out. It's a little square thing here, and there's a little tab right there we're going to bend towards the rear of the vehicle because it holds down this square thing. We're going to just bend it out of the way. I'll get to that in a second. Look at all the wires, isn't that fun? That's like for all your rear defrost and, you know, rear wiper and stuff. I have a screwdriver that I simply put in back behind here between the head of that square thing and this. And you can just twist. Sometimes it's easier said than done. I'm doing this with one hand, but you can do that and twist, or you can pry, or you can get a little hammer and start from like over here and hammer out there and hammer it across. Your choice. Just be easy on this tab. It only has a certain number of bends in it, I'm sure. You're going to bend it out of the way on both sides. Now you can see my tab is bent out of the way enough for that to clear. So in order to get that out, we need to kind of release some of the pressure off that. So we're going to work on the front ones, the front pins, to release some of that. And I've already done one side, so we're going to go over to this example. This is how you start this thing from scratch. You may or may not have this clip on here. You should, because it keeps this and these from rubbing up against each other and wiggling too much. We're going to kink a wire over time. The wiper washer fluid squirter, which runs over to here for the squirter, is the same tubing that they use on the front for the wiper washer. So you don't want to kink that, because that's actually runs through here. So I simply just get a little screwdriver and I pry out without rubbing that, without killing that boot. And you can probably put a cloth here so you don't scratch the paint, but I simply just pry that clip off. And it just kind of wiggles off. And that's the way it goes back on, is square to the outside and curved to the inside. So now that that's out of the way, you can gently kind of move this rubbery part out of the way so you can see what the hell's going on here. So there's your pin. So on this right side here, if I can point to it, will it let me? Can you see where I'm pointing here? There. On that side of the thing is the head of it. On this side of it right here is a little C-clip they need to take off of there. Now it's not a typical C-clip, it's just a flat C. You can see it actually has a, if I can turn it right, it actually has a little flare on it. Let me get a bigger screwdriver, sorry. Longer screwdriver. It's got a little flare on it that, see how I can pivot it around? That flare has a little tab. I'm going to push the screwdriver right on that tab right there. And that tab, I think, has a little tiny square hole in it too for a little screwdriver. So I'll do that. Again, using two hands. And maybe I can call it. See what happens. Again, my videos are always informal. Unedited for us laymen's. I'm going here with this screwdriver. I'd be done by now, but since I'm trying to film, the camera's in my way. See that little C-clip? You're going to sit there and put the screwdriver in there. You're going to push down on that, and what it'll do is it'll pop the C-clip off down into this little body down here, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to fall in here. And then what you do is you would take a magnet tool, like my handy-dandy magnet tool here, and you would just put that down in there and just go and suck it up. You can actually see it's attracting it right now. So I'll work on that. I'll show you what it looks like when that clip is off, and then we'll get this little pin out. I got the little clip out of there. You'll see it's kind of just laying there. Now you can be familiar with how it's shaped and what I was pushing on. So I just suck up with the magnet tool. So essentially, what I was doing was, when this is around the pin, I took a screwdriver. In other words, when this was around the pin, I kept rotating the C-clip until that little L-shaped tab at the bottom here, where my thumb's hitting, was facing downwards. And I just simply took the screwdriver and I just pushed a magnetic screwdriver, funny. Get the other screwdriver. I simply took the screwdriver and got on that flat edge and just pushed down like that, and it just popped it off the pin. Now, what we have to deal with is the pin itself. It's a little hard to get in on the behind it in order to pry it out there. What I'm getting at is, in order to get the screwdriver, focus, sorry. In order to get the screwdriver behind that like that so you can twist, because you're trying to get between that black housing of the strut and that. In order to get that in there and like pry it out, it keeps slipping off. So what you can do is go to the other side. If you notice, there's material still sticking out. Let me zoom out some here. So since the material is still sticking out, you'll notice that if I go in here with the screwdriver and I get on the side of that material and I just kind of pry, you'll notice that the pin will be pushed in more to the right. Like that. See that? I move the pin over. And you're trying to get that pin to be flush enough where you can't see that little silver sticking out anymore. You can't differentiate the silver from the black. So I'll do that again off camera, but you'll move that pin to the right, which will allow this head to have a gap that you can put the screwdriver in. And I'll show you what I mean. So now that I've gone down in here and pried that silver thing from not sticking out as much, you'll now notice that now, unlike before, we now have that gap, so that little silver showing through. We didn't have the gap before. We had this head right up against that black. Now we get this little gap, so now you can go in there and do your pry. Now, notice I slipped because this is under a little pressure. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to film this, but as my right hand's on the screwdriver and I'm prying this way to get the pin out without ruining the rubber. Well, I have that out like that. My left hand is on the hatch. I'm simply just pushing up on the hatch and kind of wiggling at the same time while I'm prying this out, because this is under pressure and you want to kind of wiggle it to get this pin out. And we'll do that now. So as you can see, the pin is way off to the right now. It's almost out. But the thing is, once I do this, the hatch is going to fall on your head. So don't pull this out all the way yet. So what I was doing was I had my hand up on the tailgate and I'm sitting there just, wiggling this thing up and down. And as I wiggle the tailgate up and down, you'll see the pin moving. So you push it all the way up and down, you just keep moving it, wiggle it until that pin comes out. But I'm not going to do that just yet because the tailgate's going to come down. So we're going to prop it up. There's a couple ways to do that. 2x4s, pretty much wherever you want, and I'll show you. The way I chose was a shower curtain rod. I simply put it kind of up in here between the glass and where it meets the rubber, or on the cloth, and I put it down here in that knot so it doesn't slip, like right about there, or you can put it on this surface here because it's grippy and rubbery. Either way, you want to thread this thing up until it holds the hatch up for you, or a helper to hold it, but it's going to take a while. They'll get tired arms. But I am alone, so I'm going to just prop this up, and we're going to get that pin out, and now we'll go on to the next step. There's that pin. Once I got the tailgate wiggling up and down and just pried off that pin, get a magnet tool in there, grab that and bring it on out, and we're on to the next fun step. Recap: we have the little seat clip off and the pin out on this side, including the clip that covers these two from flexing. Same with the other side. We've gone in and dropped that headliner off those three little tabs. We've dropped the black pegs out right here where that hole is to get the headliner down. Now we have access to stuff. We've also bent our tab on both sides to get out of that square thing. Now we need to relieve the pressure off this pin. So we're going to get inside And in my case, my seats are folded up. So if we're supposed to climb inside here now to take the pressure off it, and you have to access it from the inside. Well, make sure you can get out of the car, or whether make sure that this is working. This latch to open it, because basically you're gonna bring the tailgate down, and you don't have to click it shut. But if it accidentally clicks shut, you're kind of like trapped in the car. So you got to have a way to either pull this lever to get out if it's working, or in my case, I'd have to climb over the seats to get out the side door. But you can also fold your seats down and et cetera, et cetera. So you're not trapped. It's just at first you're thinking, uh-oh, what did I just do? So I'm gonna undo the prop rod. The tailgate is really heavy now, and it's gonna pretty much just be free swinging and fall. So you have to really support it with both arms and be careful about it as you back your way into the car and get inside the hatch. So I'm gonna do that now. Obviously, I'm not gonna film that, and we'll be back. We're at this point. We have the hatch propped up still, and we bent this tab away. We're gonna get under the head of this thing and just pry it out of there. You can see it coming up a little bit at a time. And my wires are in the way, so you can use your other hand to move them up out of the way, or you can undo this blue thing. Just get your screwdriver under there and pop that out. Don't break this vacuum line. That's your lock. That's your trunk lock. And don't pierce this hose, because that's your wiper squirter hose. You puncture a hole in that and you hit the wiper squirter, this is going to fall into your ceiling, so you don't want water in your ceiling. So I'm going to take that pin out on both sides. Now that that pin is out, you can see a little bit of rust there. But for me, it's advisable to use this Sil Glide brake lubricant stuff. Just put it on the pin for next time, so you can not have a chance of it seizing so much. And now that we have both square pins out, we're going to go on to the next step, which is removing the strut. So now that we have that pin out, you can see the black part of the strut in there moving around, right? We're going to pull the strut out of here. So basically, you can grab it from here, from the middle, or whatever, and just start shifting it that way. And you see the strut starts emerging from here. And this is where you got to get a little creative, because like you got to kind of, you remove it towards the front of the car, but you kind of grab it. And at any given point, if it gets kind of stuck, then you can just like rotate it and then move it again, and then rotate it, move it again, just getting through all your obstacles until you get it. And the hint to this is this next rod I was talking about down here that holds the ceiling up. You can basically put your hand up under here, and this looks terrifying, but it's fine. You're basically flexing that wire, not bending it, you're flexing it. What happens is the wire, the next set of wires goes like this, clunk, and see how it just stays? Now you just made yourself a lot more space to get this thing up into this space in the roof here, and then back down. So I'll do that right now. So there you have it, the strut just slid out of here, and we're out. Now the fun part is putting it back in, and we'll show you that. Before I put it back in, there's a couple of pieces of rubber that go in here. One of these is this bellows that I had totally wrong, actually. Now that I got through some junkyard cars, I realized when you feed this strut back through here, put this up in here, with the big, not the conical end, but the bigger end, facing the back of the car. So it gets bigger as it goes to the rear of the car. So I kind of just put this in this hole, feed the strut through it all the way. And what it's going to end up doing, this is kind of hard to explain, but I can maybe do it later. What it's going to end up doing is that rubber thing is going to come through this hole, only the front lip. The front lip is going to be on my side of the hole. The rest of the boot is going to be from here back towards the front of the car. That lip is what this is going to have done. And what Mercedes did was they put a little bit of black, like weather stripping adhesive all around the inside of this opening. So when they push this boot through after the struts through, hell, I might be able to even glue it in here now and then feed the strut through it later. But nevertheless, you do gotta feed this through, and obviously two hands. Get the front lip glued on here, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. I may just do that first and then just feed the strut through it later. The other piece is this piece. You have like a flat end with the part number on it, and you have like kind of like a cone end. The cone end goes towards the front. So what you do is, again, two hands. You gotta lift the tailgate up some so you can do this. But what you're doing is you're essentially sliding this up, this slot, around this hatch thing. So you'd feed it down in there, and then you go slide and you slide it up. What it does is it allows, when you shut the hatch, what happens is you have this on the inside of the hole, and this thing over here, they meet. So, I'm trying to do this with one hand, sorry. So when you have the strut through that boot thing, this little piece where I'm pointing to, wiggling, is part of that middle hinge. And as you close the thing, it goes clunk, and it closes this hole off. So it acts like a seal. Clunk. These are a must, because I'm in Oregon. What happens is the rain comes down this channel, it fills up that hole and goes back down into the interior and down on the inside of the windows. You want to have these two pieces in here. Do not get them backwards, do not remove them. So that creates like a seal. Just every time it opens it up, shuts. Very key. And I'll show you what that looks like when they're on. Yeah, I need to put this out of the way. The way I'm going to end up getting this on this piece onto this hinge is I'm reaching back through the hole. My hand up under here like this, up back behind. And as you can see, I'm feeding it through the hole. Well, after I fit it through the hole, I'm putting that little square slot. See it on the end of the hinge arm and slide it up the hinge. You'll see what it looks like. Now you see I've gotten this rubber thing slid up the hinge, and you'll notice there's this little ridge right here. This little ridge stops it, so it doesn't allow it to slip past that point. So as you see, this comes up, slides up, keep going until it stops. And it stops at that ridge, so it won't go any further. So when the hinge comes down, it moves with it, and it plugs that hole. That kind of like sandwich thing I was talking about. Do you see how there's these little ridges I was talking about? 1, 2, 3, 4. This rubber thing sits in between this ridge and that ridge. It just sits in this channel right here. So raise it up over that first bump, so it's in between these two, so it can't slip out of that position. We're gonna work on this little boot. So mine was like missing. The last guy that did it didn't even have it in there. So again, boot, larger section towards the front. Just feed it in here, and we're gonna end up putting the strut just through it later. And like I was saying, this front little lip needs to be inside here. Let's see if I can get it to focus in the right spot. I'm talking about, I have like a ½ an inch of room to get my camera in here. Okay, here we go. So here's a boot. You want just the front lip inside this hole. So working between your hand being back there and up here, I'm just gonna act like I'm gonna feed it through, smush it through the hole towards me. See how that little lip is starting to appear on this side of the hole? You want to pop that in all the way around until it stays, and I'll get to that in a second. You'll see what it looks like. Now that the boot is pushed in towards me, I have essentially gone around and made sure that just the front edge is clicked in on my side of the hole. I just took a little screwdriver and just went in around the outer edge and just push, push, push until it's there. The way it first started was I had my hand going inside the bellow, and I just squished it like this. And if you can see, my hand is through there, and I reached in through here, and I went click like this. And I'm using my hand, and I'm basically pulling towards the front of the car, kind of like a come here kind of gesture. I'm going click, 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 and making it all the way around that thing. And I did put black RTV on the inside of the ring of the boot before I put it in. And from the outside here, again, I took a screwdriver, and then working here, just went click, 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 and kept clicking it in. And your test is when you take the bellows back here from the inside and pull on it towards the front of the car. It doesn't now it doesn't pull through the hole. So now you know that part is good. And on to this piece. You can put this piece in kind of through here like this. Turn it, the flat spot towards the rear of the car, the nozzle towards the front of the car, and you can put this in this way and twist it and slide it up, or you can feed it through the bellows, which is fun, but you can just push it all the way through the bellows and then slide it in from the back, and I'll show you what that looks like. So again, we're going to revisit this little piece here. So if you notice, a white background, if you notice, there's less material down here. There's from here to here is shorter than from here to here. So the top has more overhang lip than the bottom. That little horseshoe shape thing right there goes to the top. Reason being, when this hinge closes to that hole, that hinge is like curved, right? So the hinge ends up doing is it goes kind of like this. So the more closed the tailgate is, the higher the hinge is, which means you can tell there's more surface area here, between here and here, than there is between here and here. The reason that the part that's got more tail goes down is because the more the tailgate closes, the higher the hinge bar is up on the body. It starts going up that way. So the whole thing starts going up, leaving a gap at the bottom. So you want more material in the bottom. So as this raises up, there's more material to close the gap in the bottom. If you had it like this, it would come up and it would be above the opening and water would get in. So it's got to go like this. Part number on the right side, part number on the right side, the little U at the bottom. And I will either feed it in from the front here and pull it back towards me and get it between these two notches, or I can feed it back behind through the bellows, which might be fun. Either way, I'm going to do one on one side, one on the other, and we'll report back. So I try to go in back behind here, back through the bellows and moving that grommet all the way through it. It's just kind of tough, and I don't want to push that bellows out of place too much. So I am going to feed it into the front. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to lift the tailgate up with my hand, and my little prop is going to fall. I don't have a helper, but if you notice, the tailgate will go up even higher, like way higher, like that. See, way up. That allows more gap in here for me to get in there. So I'm going to prop this prop rod, a bunch of threads up to make it higher, so I have more room to get this rubber thing up back onto that. And again, I'm talking about this, but maybe all your guys is already in position and never got removed from the factory. Mine did, so I'm just showing you how this whole thing kind of works if everything is just disassembled. So the way I ended up getting this in here was, it goes in flat like that. I just push it into the front. Boop, now it's flat. And you're like, well, how do I lift up on that? Well, I put my hand again, my index finger back through the bellows. You'll see it emerge in a second. Hey, there's my hand. And I just simply got up under it with my hand and lifted up like that. See how my index finger is just back behind there? Lifting it straight up. So while I'm lifting it up with that hand, I have my other hand on the front edge of it, and I'm lifting them up together. That's how I got it on. So again, now that it's slipped on, I'm going to move this till it's up and sitting between these two ridges. I'm just going to click it in there. And again, you'll notice in this video I'm like switching sides a lot. It's because I'm kind of doing this car at the same time I'm kind of stopping taking videos. You can take this part carefully and move it to the inside of the car on either side. And if you get it wedged in between the black grommet where my thumb is and the green up here in the middle, you can kind of get it wedged sometimes, but it'll just stay out of your way. Just like that, just gotta tuck it in. It should stay and not out of your way. But anyways, what I'm going to be doing is going back in here. I'm going to be putting black RTV on our side towards the back of the car, all on the inner edge of this hole. So when I go to put that boot in, and and that little flare flares out around these. It'll kind of glue that in so it doesn't shift it back and forth. So, now that I got this piece on with those two little nubs, I got that bellows in with the little thing clipped over, I installed all the strut. So this is the disclaimer. If you have any frustrations, or you're having a bad day, or any pending issues in your mind in this lifetime to make you want to like punch a baby or kick a puppy, go and do all those things now to get out of your system, because this is the only frustrating part of this project, is getting these pins back in. So, as you can tell, the bellows back in there. I'm going to do like we did reverse. You take the strut. Obviously, this circular end is at the front of the car, and this clevis end is on this end, towards the back of the car. And we're gonna feed it on back through. Same kind of thing. It'll stop on stuff, and you gotta rotate it and angle it and just kind of keep wiggling it. But the whole time, keep in mind that you don't want to have it mush this thing. You want to go into this thing through it. So look through this hole as you feed it through to see. See, there it is right there. See it wiggling. There it is. Look through this hole to see where it's going to meet and go through that thing. So you just kind of keep twisting it and moving it and getting it all the way through until it emerges out to the front here. And I'll do that right now. Now that that end is through here, what I actually do is I actually just pinch my hand and I just compress this so I can feel that metal rod. Now I can manipulate it. So you see on this end, you can actually see my fingers squeezing. My index finger and my thumb. You can squeeze that and sit there and manipulate this thing up and down through the hole. And you're going to want to get it lined up, obviously, with the hole in that hinge. That's the color green. And that's why this is kind of a bitch, because you can't really see a lot. You're constantly trying to peel this thing back out of your way to look down in there. And it's just kind of one of those things where, like, I have a headlight on right now. So wherever I look, it looks. And it's kind of a two-hand thing where you hold this back and you pinch the strut with your other hand and kind of line up the holes. And then we'll talk about that pin next, which is probably the worst part of this. As you can kind of see, so here's your perspective again. You can kind of see it starting to try to merge through here. So if I have my other hand on it and I'm pinching that bellows to move this rod, you can see that. You can see that I'm kind of moving it up and down and forward and back. When you move it forward, it actually just dead ends. It stops right there. That's how you know you're pretty much lined up. Now up and down is a different story. You have to kind of move it up and down while pulling towards you. And it'll just kind of see how it fell right there? Sometimes you can get it to just stay when you let go. It won't keep falling down like that. Like that. See how that stays? Now that that stays, it's hands-free and you can go and do the next step. Here's the fun part. Getting this pin through both those black parts of the bracket and through the body hinge. This guy right here. I greased it because it slides a little easier. So the head of the bolt goes towards the inside of the car. You need to get this thing flipped up with your hand or a tool, and we're going to put the pin down in there like that and then rotate it so that it's straight down, and then rotate it like that and in. But that's hard to do with just your hands, so what I've done is I'll take a needle nose and I grab this in a certain way, and I'll show you that in a second when I get two hands. So I've grabbed a needle nose with this kind of handle. And you're like, where do you get that? Well, Harbor Freight has them. You could probably use a needle nose that has straight handles but with the curved ends. But all I know is that this thing will curve away to my right that I need it. And when I have it on the left side of the car to do this one, it'll curve. If I flip it over from here to here, it'll curve away from that part of the car, and I can go drop the pin down and in. On this side, I'm just grabbing it the other way around. Same kind of thing. Drop the pin down, rotate, and in. And what you're doing is while you're holding it there, because you're not going to get through the hole this way perfectly. You're going to get it kind of started in the hole, but it's not going to be able to push in. What I'm doing was, this is my right hand, right? I'm putting the pin in. It's sort of started. I'm going to take my left hand with the screwdriver. I'm going to hold the head of this pin there while I remove the needle nose out from underneath it. So in other words, my screwdriver is holding it there so that the pin doesn't fall as soon as I let go of the needle nose pliers. And obviously that's a two-hand operation, so I hope that makes sense. Here's an example. If I move this out of the way, see how the pin's started but not all the way through? I'm going to take my hand, now that it's kind of stuck there, index finger, I'm going to put it on the head of that pin. Of course you can't see it. I'm going to put it on the head of the pin right there while I'm pushing to my left, and I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to start wiggling the tailgate up and down. I already have one in, remember, so if you don't have the prop, but my shower curtain rod has some spring to it, so as I move the tailgate up and down, it kind of plunges some. So while I'm pushing that pin, I'm going to wiggle the tailgate back and forth, up and down, and wiggle that pin with my index finger until it pops through. It's the only part of the whole process of doing this that's just kind of like takes your patience. And if you drop the pin into the little area down there, get your magnet tool and pull it back out. All right, to get this clip in, now that you've gotten the pin in, the little L-shaped part needs to be facing away from the car so that when you push it onto the pin and kind of like rotate it next time, that you can now take a screwdriver and push on that flat spot. And you have a surface to push on, and you'll push it off the pin for next time. Hopefully there isn't a next time, but I guess there's going to be. I grab this thing, kind of like. So again, the L piece is to the left. The outside of the car, I should just say. Don't think left, just think outside of the car. And towards you. So it's outside of the car and towards me, towards the back of the car. And I grab it with these. These are actually they're called Titan 11400 is the number on it. It's like Harbor Freight. Got the perfect curves to it to actually just get right on in there. No other needle nose I had would do that. But I grab it like this, edgewise, like that. Now don't squeeze too hard, the thing may spring out of there and you'll never see it again, but just kind of give it enough grip so it doesn't shift forwards and back. And you're going to take that thing, and you can see how this fits right perfectly through there, just with the right bend to it, and I just kind of go push it in like that. I don't know if I can film it, but maybe sideways, but as you can see, it's on the end of it. And I'm putting it way back there and onto the pin, and it just pushes on. And you have to kind of mess with it, and then follow up with a screwdriver on that little flat L-shaped part of this to push it on to make sure it's on there. Then we move on to the back pin, which is this fun guy right here. What I recommend is, I'll show you in a second, basically get in the car facing outwards, and I'm pushing this in while my other arm is kind of pushing up and down on the hatch to get it to kind of wiggle in, and then when it gets in some, you can just hammer it in the rest of the way. So now that we're inside the car looking backwards, there's my knees. You get the pin in your hand, and you get over here, and you just get your hand back behind this hole, and you start moving this thing up and down until you get the hole lined up. Notice the hole is kind of lined up to the rear. Well, you're never going to compress this strut to make it move, so what you do is while you're lying here like this, you either get a helper to wiggle the hatch up and down until the hole lines up, or while I have my right hand here, I can kind of reach out with my left hand right about out here, a little shallower here, and push up and down and wiggle. Don't let this thing come out from underneath it though. You got to keep that in mind. It's better to have a helper, but I'm doing this alone. But anyways, I'll keep wiggling this over here, trying to wiggle it in there. At the same time, I'm pushing that hatch up and down to get it forwards, back, left, and right, and just get it barely started. And then I'm going to hammer tap it the rest of the way, And then we're going to rebend the little tab back over the square head of that. And we'll tidy it all back together by putting the headliner back in. Alternatively, you can take the pin, I'm standing on the outside of the car, and you can just take your arm and reach way back if you're flexible enough. And while you're reaching way back, you put your left hand here and push up from here while you're standing out here. Tomato, tomato, it's all up to you. However you wiggle that sucker in there. Alright, now that we have the pin in, we just kind of, I got my wife to hold the hatch up and down to wiggle it, and I was laying in here, getting the bolt in. Bend your little tab back hitting it with a little, screwdriver with a hammer. And then this little caved in part of the roof, you just, with clean hands, I should probably have clean hands, I will use my sleeve, as such. You will, just gonna push up on it, and it pops up into place by spring. Now we're gonna go and put our little black pegs in those two spots on both sides. And then we'll take this rod and stretch it back towards us and rehook it up on those three little green tabs. And then we will go and put the headliner back in, kind of in, up, get those two little black plastic pegs up under there, and make sure that one little edge right here, the edge I was talking about before, this little edge right here, this little L-shaped edge, is up and under the rubber. So I get this rubber and like peel it, the top edge of it down, and get that back behind that rubber. And that'll be the step where you put the trim back on here with all these screws, and you're done. The hatch is up. I'll put this back where it was, which is here. I'm going to put that little clip back on right here. You just kind of squeeze it around the middle first while you stretch this out and feed it around the wire loom. And that's it. Hatch strut's done. I hope this helps people. Again, my video is really informal. I kind of mumble and talk fast, but I just want someone to they have the instructions on them, I hope, already textually. I just hope that they can continue on with this, and it's just more of a guide rather than a actual, I must have every single detail, but that's kind of how it works. And then same thing here, this little rubber thing, it just stays with the hinge, and when you shut the hatch, this little round rubber thing goes to the back and plugs the hole. It just keeps moving back and forth as you open and shut it. So hopefully I have no more rainwater in here, because I had rainwater coming into my footwell here. It was hemorrhaging. It was coming down the roof in here, filling up, going in that hole, because there's nothing to plug it. There's not this to plug it. And it was dripping down past my wiring, my light, my dome light here, and down in here, and into this, making a pond back here, and I had a little bit of mold, so we don't want that, especially in Oregon. Hope that helps you guys. Thanks. Bye. So now that I'm laying in the car, this is the passenger side. I have this little tool that looks like these little tweezers, but they have a curved nose on them. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the curved nose under the rubber, and I'm putting the rubber over the lip on the headliner, that little L shape we were talking about, all the way down. I need to probably do it on a warmer day where it's more flexible, but I'm just going to make my way down.